Welcome to Small Talk Daily for Thursday, September 25th, 2008. This morning we'll continue where we left off in our Seaside tutorial, and just to give you an idea where we were, let's hit blog view, and this is where we were. We have a post from today and a post from yesterday, so let's push that aside. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some code to the menu UI and a bunch of other places so that we have filtering capabilities with some menu options in the root viewer. So to get started, let's go to our menu UI, and we're going to add an instance variable to this because we want to have our menu entries. So we'll add an instance variable for that, and we'll create accessors for that. So with that done, we now need to change the initialize method to set the entries to a collection. So we'll do that. And now we're going to go back to our root UI for just a moment, and we're going to go to its initialization because we want to change this. Instead of having blog menu UI just be initialized this way, we're going to have the menu component initialize itself a little differently. So we'll say self initialize menu component, and then we have to of course add that method, so initialize menu component. Now we'll go ahead and we'll add some code here. So the code for this is pretty much what was in there here, but now we're going to set up some entries. Add an entry for all posts, add an entry for just today's posts. And we have references to this all posts and today's posts that don't exist yet, so we have to go ahead and add that. But first, let's add the simple code that adds the entry. So we'll do this add entry with action. And all we're going to do here is set up a little association. So we'll say self entries add the entry, and we'll have the association to the block. And that's pretty much it for that. So we have an association which has the label hooked up to the action, and then we'll be able to render that properly. Of course, the only problem is we put this here, and this really belongs in the menu component. So let's go back here to the menu component, and we'll add it here. And then we'll go to the root UI, and we'll just remove that. So with that little typo out of the way, we'll now go back to the menu UI itself, and we'll have to make one small change here to get it to actually render. So we'll add a new rendering method. Render content on, and all we're really going to do here is iterate across our entries and spit those out. So across each entry, we'll say each one needs to be an anchor, and each anchor should have a callback, which is the way we have an anchor actually execute code. So we'll say the callback for this is each value, if you remember that I stuck a block on that. And we want the label for that to be each key. So remembering that those were associations. And then we want that to be nicely separated, so we say separated by HTML space. And we'll accept that. So now we have the rendering hooked up in the UI, but we still have to write all the filtering code. So let's go back to the list UI, and we'll add some methods here. So I'll call the category I want these in to be called filtering. And we'll do set all posts filter. And we'll set this filter block gets assigned storage default post. Now, you'll notice I haven't declared filter block. I'm going to make that an instance variable. I'll just go ahead and say make it an instance variable. And if I select back out, you'll see there it is, it defined it. I also do want some accessing methods for that, so let's go ahead and define those before I go further. And now we'll go back to filtering, and I want to do the set today's posts filter. And this is going to be very similar, so we'll do filter block gets assigned storage default posts, only we're going to select across these. And keeping in mind that these are posts objects, we can ask if each timestamp as a date is the same as date today. And that's our today post filter. So we now have two filters, one that'll give us everything and one that'll just give us today's stuff. Now we of course need one other change. We want to have a default filter. So we'll go back to our initialize method here and we'll do self set all posts filter because by default we want to display everything. And that gets us most of the way there. The only thing we have to do is go back to the root UI. If you recall, when we initialized our menu component, we set these up to be methods in our own class. So we have to have those hook up to the menu component's filtering. So we'll add a filtering category here. And now we'll go in and add all posts. And that'll just be the list component, set all posts filter. And then today's post will look awfully similar. It'll just set today's posts filter. So that's almost complete. The only thing we have to add here in the root UI is we have a little bit of Seaside infrastructure. So I'm going to go ahead to accessing, and I'm going to add a method called children. And what children is it's each component expects to tell Seaside which non-called interfaces do you expect me to show. So which interfaces are going to be part of the main UI. So I'm going to tell it array with my list component with my menu component. And that should set that up. Now, the only thing we need to do now is go back to our list UI and we need to modify that rendering a little bit. But before I show you that, let's go over here and bring this, and we'll do a refresh on this. And you notice that we now have the menus up here. They're not rendered all that excitingly, but we do have them. But you'll notice that nothing really changes. And that's because even though I've got them hooked up, I haven't changed the rendering for the list component. So in the list component, I need to go ahead and change the way it renders. So you'll notice that our render content on here just goes through by default all the posts every time, regardless of what menu pick I made. What I want to do is change this. So I want to change this to self filter block value. And that means the posts are just whatever came back from the filter, and then iterate through those results. Now, we're just about ready to try this out. If we hit all posts, looks like it works. Hit today's posts, looks like it doesn't. Well, the reason for that is actually a little tricky. If you go back here, each value is just the block. So it turns out we need to send value to that. And this way, when we go through here, the callback is actually the code we want to execute. So let's try that. So we'll try all posts and just today's post. Now it seems to work. So we've now got our blog server so that we have a little basic filtering. We can show just today's posts or all posts, and you can extend this same metaphor to add additional filtering if you wanted to. So that all depends on how far you want to take that kind of example. But in any case, we'll leave it here for today, and we'll pick this up next time. So until then, have fun with Smalltalk.